and now you've got your second film out.
Yeah.
Am I right? Is that the second film?
Yeah,
it's
it
the second
is.
film, yeah. And I watched it the other night, and it's amazing.
Thank you.
So congrats.
Appreciate that. It was, we thought it was going to take about 4 months to make it. So we started making it right after the first film, which is called Minimalism, was the name of the first film. It came out and we were like, all right, we've got this idea for a new film. And it was based around this talk. Ryan and I went out in 2017 and we gave this talk called Less Is Now. 50 different cities around the US, Canada, Australia. And we filmed the talk at the Wilbur Theater in Boston. And it looked like a stand-up comedy special without comedy, because it was a serious sort of talk, right? And we were like, oh, this just isn't working. And so we then spent the next 4 years finding the way to make this, to sort of piece this film together in a meaningful way, because we had some stories that we really wanted to tell. We had a concept of making it a sort of talk, but also a documentary, right? And taking the Wilbur Theater talk and trying to just mix that with documentary elements, it was like taking a really good, piece of salmon and mixing it with chocolate cake. It just doesn't go together, right? And so we spent 4 years really just piecing this thing together, and I was really blown away by what the team put together. I mean, it was. Thank God for Matt and Jacob and Tim and everyone else who worked on the film.
Yeah, it's amazing how a good team of people around you can create something so beautiful. It's funny because Matt Diavella, the way we even got connected with him was back in 2013. He offered to do a book trailer for us. And he did that and it went great. And then he was like, hey, have you guys ever thought about maybe doing a documentary? And Josh was like, yeah, it's a good idea. Let's do that. Get you on the road with us. And we literally had no budget. And that first documentary, Matt directed, edited, did everything himself. And I knew we had something special after that first doc. And yeah, it was great to be able to recreate something meaningful again with him.
It's awesome. Yeah, it was beautiful. And I also I was surprised, and I really appreciated that there's like almost like a spoken word like aspect to it. Like I was watching, I was like, oh shit, Joshua's like, he's like a stand-up poet, in the way that he's like delivering this. And it was like, it was very, it had this like real sort of emotionally resonant quality to it, which you might not expect, like first when you're first walking into a documentary about minimalism.
Right. Yeah. They're sort of, it's weird because Netflix made a movie about our lives, which is a really strange thing, but it's not really about Josh and Ryan. It's a film about starting over, right? And part of that is my story of starting over about 10 years ago when I was 30 years old and beginning to sort of let go of my identity in the corporate world and the stuff, the minimalism component of that. But then also Ryan starting over. But then you see all these other people in the film as well. We have some expert interviews in there. So people like Erwin McManus even has a line in the film about, I think we should all be able to etch a sketch our lives and say, I thought this is the life I wanted, but it's not. And I want to start over. And then you see all of these other people we call everyday minimalists in the film. The sort of, we initially were going to bring them in the studio, but then COVID happened. So we did these webcam interviews with different people and sort of went inside their homes and their lives and saw their process of starting over as well. And so fundamentally, I think that's what's different from this film versus the first one is the first one was an introduction to minimalism in many ways, but this one is an introduction to starting over with less.
Yeah. I feel like the first film, it's kind of like it's what we were doing after we became minimalists and left the corporate world and wrote a book. But this film, Less Is Now, is more of it's the why behind what we did. So in a way, it's a bit of a prequel. But yeah, it's one of the best. You kind of alluded to it earlier, Max. Like one of my favorite compliments is when someone is like, "Man, I really got emotional during that film." And it's not like Josh and I love to see people cry, but the fact that it's hitting a chord with people, I mean, that's why we did it.
Well, I mean, I definitely related to your story with your mom. I mean,
right.
I went through that same process that you did, uncovering the boxes under the bed,
right?
Just 2 years ago,
yeah.
And yeah, that's like a hard thing to go through, and I'm sure many people can relate to that.
Well, the line in the film is, our memories aren't in our things, our memories are inside us, and that's I think we can understand that intellectually, but when you start to go through the stuff, you start to feel it viscerally. And it's different. I mean, of course, it conjures up. All these objects become triggers for the memories, but the memories aren't ever in the things. Unfortunately, in our society, we have the average American household has 300,000 items in it, which would be fine and dandy if it was all bringing us joy and happiness and contentment, fulfillment, satisfaction, well-being. But the very things that we bring into our life to sort of increase our well-being actually get in the way of our tranquility. They get in the way of what it means to live a meaningful life. So Ryan in the film has this great line where he said, all the things I brought into my life to make me happy, they weren't doing their job. And I think we recognize that, but then of course, momentum just sort of propels us forward. And we look in the rear view and all of a sudden we're 20, 30, 40, 50. Michael in the film, 67. We're 70 years into our life and realizing I've been clinging to all of these attachments. And at some point, I want to begin again. Well, that beginning starts with letting go. But letting go isn't something you do. Letting go is something you stop doing. It's the stopping of the clinging. And really, that's what we tried to address in the film.